Shayla Hart was 30 years old, gentle in spirit, soft in her voice, and full of faith. She believed marriage was not something you threw away easily. She believed prayer could change a man. She believed love could survive hard seasons. But inside her own home, love was becoming pain. That night, the clock had passed midnight. Shayla sat in the living room with Kingston's dinner still covered on the table. The food had gone cold, but she had not moved it. She kept looking at the door, whispering small prayers under her breath. "Lord, bring him home safely," she whispered. Then the door opened. Kingston Vale stepped in, smelling of alcohol, his shirt half untucked, his eyes heavy and cold. At 35, Kingston was handsome, respected, and admired by many people in the community. Outside the house, people called him a good man. But inside the house, Shayla knew another Kingston. She stood up quickly. "Kingston, you are home. Why are you drinking like this again?" He stopped and looked at her, as if her question had offended him. "Woman," he said slowly, "before you ask me why I drink, go and give birth first." Shayla froze. "Kingston." "No," he snapped. "Don't call my name like you are my mother. A woman who cannot give her husband a child should not be questioning him." Her lips trembled, but she lowered her voice. "I only asked because I was worried." "Worried?" He laughed bitterly. "Be worried about your empty womb. Be worried about the shame you have brought into this house." Shayla closed her eyes. The words hit her deeply, but she swallowed her tears. She had heard them before, again and again. Barren, useless, shame, empty. She pointed softly toward the table. "Your food is ready. I kept it for you." Kingston looked at the covered plate and pushed it aside with his hand. "I don't want food from a woman who cannot even give me a family." Shayla's heart sank. "Please don't say that," she whispered. "Children come from God." Kingston stepped closer, his voice low and cruel. "Then maybe God has forgotten you." For a moment the whole room became silent. Shayla looked at him with tears gathering in her eyes. She wanted to answer, she wanted to defend herself, but she remembered what her pastor always said about patience. She remembered what her mother always told her about endurance. So she pressed her hands together and forced herself to remain calm. "I will keep praying," she said. Kingston smirked. "Pray louder then. Maybe heaven is not hearing you." Later that night, Shayla lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She did not sleep. She only listened to Kingston moving around the room, muttering painful words as if her heart was not already tired. Then he turned toward her. "Shayla." She sat up immediately. "Yes?" "Do you know what people are saying about me?" he asked. She shook her head. "They are saying I married beauty, but got no legacy." His voice grew colder. "Do you know how embarrassing that is for a man like me?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I am your wife, Kingston. I am not your embarrassment." He turned away. "Then prove it." By morning, Kingston had changed again. He wore a clean suit. He sprayed expensive cologne. He smiled into the mirror like the perfect Christian husband the world believed him to be. At church, he would lift his hands. At church, he would speak about love. At church, women would tell Shayla, "You are blessed to have a man like Kingston." And Shayla would smile with a broken heart, because nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew that the man everyone praised in public was the same man who crushed her spirit behind closed doors. But heaven saw, and one day, the same woman he mocked would carry a blessing so great that Kingston Vale would regret every word he ever spoke. The next evening, Shayla Hart sat beside Kingston Vale in the car, holding her purse tightly on her lap. The road was wet from an earlier drizzle. Streetlights passed over the windshield one after another, but inside the car there was no warmth, no conversation, no peace. Kingston drove with one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting near his phone. His face was hard, like he was already angry before Shayla even spoke. Shayla looked at him quietly. She wanted to say something gentle. She wanted to ask if they could stop somewhere and buy food. Since morning, she had barely eaten. Her stomach felt empty, but her fear was louder than her hunger. Still, after a long silence, she whispered, "Kingston?" He did not look at her. "What?" "Please, can we stop somewhere? I am hungry." The car became even quieter. Kingston's jaw tightened. "You are hungry?" Shayla nodded carefully. "Yes, just something small. I have not eaten well today." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "So now I am your driver and your servant." "No, Kingston, that is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" he snapped. "Everyday complaint. Everyday problem. You cannot give me a child, but you can give me stress." Shayla turned her face toward the window. She blinked quickly so her tears would not fall. "Kingston, I only said I was hungry." "And I said I am tired." His voice rose. "Tired of this marriage. Tired of your sad face. Tired of coming home to a woman who gives me nothing but silence and tears." Shayla swallowed hard. "I am trying." Kingston suddenly pulled the car to the side of the road. The tires scraped near the curb. Shayla looked around, confused. They were not close to home. The road was quiet, with only a few cars passing in the distance. "Why are you stopping?" she asked. Kingston unlocked the doors. "Get out!" Shayla stared at him. "What?" "I said get out!" Her voice shook. "Kingston, please, we are far from home." "You said you were hungry," he said coldly. "Go and find food." Rain began to tap against the windshield again. Small drops at first, then heavier. Shayla held the door handle, but did not open it. "Please don't do this. I will keep quiet. I won't ask again." Kingston leaned toward her. "You should have kept quiet from the beginning." "Kingston, please." "Out." Her hands trembled as she opened the door. The rain touched her face immediately. She stepped out slowly, still hoping he would change his mind, still hoping he would call her back, still hoping the man she married was somewhere inside the man staring at her. She bent toward the open door. "Please let me come back in." Kingston looked straight ahead. "Close my door." Shayla stood there, soaked by the rain, her lips trembling. "Close it," he repeated. She closed the door. For one painful second, the car did not move. Shayla placed her hand on the window, crying silently, waiting for mercy. Then Kingston drove away. The red taillights became smaller and smaller until the rain swallowed them. Shayla stood alone by the road, hugging herself. Her dress clung to her body. Her hair was wet. Her heart felt heavier than the clouds above her. "God," she whispered, "what did I do wrong?" No answer came, only rain. After a while, a woman driving by slowed down and asked if she needed help. Shayla wiped her face quickly and lied that her car had broken down nearby. Shame would not allow her to say the truth. By the time she reached home, it was late. The house was quiet. Kingston was sitting in the living room, eating the same food he had rejected the night before. He did not look sorry. He did not even look surprised. Shayla stood at the doorway, dripping wet. He lifted his eyes slowly and said, "Next time, learn when to keep your mouth shut." Shayla said nothing. She only walked past him, carrying her pain into the bedroom. But as she closed the door behind her, Kingston's phone rang in the living room. His voice became softer, almost sweet. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "You can come tomorrow." Shayla froze behind the door. For the first time that night, her tears stopped. The next afternoon, Shayla Hart moved through the house slowly, as if every room was listening to her pain. She had not slept well. The sound of Kingston's voice on the phone kept replaying in her mind. "You can come tomorrow." Those 4 words sat in her chest like a stone. She wanted to ask him who he had been speaking to. She wanted to stand in front of him and demand the truth. But every time she imagined his face turning cold, fear pushed her words back down. So she cleaned, she folded clothes, she washed dishes, she cooked. That was what Shayla did when her heart was troubled. She kept her hands busy because if she sat still, she would cry. By evening, Kingston came downstairs wearing a fresh shirt and expensive cologne. He looked too prepared for a man who claimed he was staying home. Shayla stood near the dining table. "Are we expecting someone?" Kingston adjusted his watch. "Why?" "You told someone yesterday to come today." He turned slowly and looked at her. "So now you're listening to my calls?" "No, I heard you from the room." "You heard what I allowed you to hear," he said. "Do not question me like we are equal in this house." Shayla lowered her eyes. "I am your wife, Kingston." He smiled without warmth. "Then act like one." Before Shayla could answer, a car horn sounded outside. Kingston walked to the door himself. Shayla stood frozen as he opened it. A woman stepped in with a confident smile, carrying a small designer bag. She was beautiful, polished, and bold. Her name was Brielle St. James, and the way she entered the house told Shayla this was not her first time being close to Kingston. Brielle looked around the living room and smiled. "So this is the famous house?" Shayla's voice came out small. "Kingston, who is she?" Kingston did not even look ashamed. "A guest." Brielle laughed softly. "Guest? Kingston, don't be so formal." Shayla felt her stomach tighten. She looked at her husband. "Why is she here?" Kingston's face hardened. "Because I invited her." "To our home." "To my home," he corrected. The words hit Shayla so deeply that she took one step back. Brielle walked toward the sofa and sat down like she belonged there. "Please don't make this uncomfortable. I am only here to spend time with someone who appreciates peace." Shayla stared at her. "Peace? In my marriage?" Kingston moved closer to Shayla and lowered his voice. "Do not embarrass me. You brought another woman into our matrimonial home, and I am the one embarrassing you?" Brielle crossed her legs and smiled. "Kingston, I told you this would happen. Some women do not know when to accept reality." Shayla turned to her. "Reality?" Brielle's smile faded into something sharper. "Yes, reality. A man wants a home with joy, laughter, children running around, not tears every day." Shayla's eyes filled immediately. Kingston said nothing. That silence hurt more than Brielle's words. Shayla looked at him and whispered, "You are letting her speak to me like this?" Kingston picked up the television remote. "If the words hurt, maybe it is because they are true." Shayla's hand went to her chest. "Kingston, I have prayed. I have waited. I have gone to every appointment with you. Why are you treating me like I chose this?" He stood still, then said coldly, "Because I am tired of waiting." The room became quiet. Brielle leaned back, satisfied. Shayla looked from her husband to the woman sitting in her living room, and something inside her began to crack. Not loudly, not all at once, just slowly, like glass under pressure. "I will not fight you," Shayla said, her voice shaking. "But God is watching this house." Kingston laughed. "Then tell God to give you a child." Brielle covered her mouth, pretending to hide her smile. Shayla turned and walked toward the hallway before her tears could fall in front of them. But as she reached the stairs, Kingston called after her. "And Shayla?" She stopped. "If you tell anyone about this, remember one thing. Nobody will believe you over me." Shayla held the railing tightly. Behind her, Brielle's perfume filled the house. In front of her, the staircase blurred through her tears. And for the first time, Shayla wondered if prayer meant staying silent, or asking God for the courage to survive the truth. The following week, Shayla Hart learned that pain was not always loud. Sometimes pain sat quietly at the breakfast table. Sometimes pain folded laundry with shaking hands. Sometimes pain smiled at visitors and said, "I am fine," even when her heart was begging for help. Since Brielle St. James entered the house, Kingston Vale had become colder. He no longer hid his disrespect. He moved through the home like Shayla was only furniture, something he could ignore unless it stood in his way. That morning, Shayla stood in the kitchen, staring at the tea kettle. Her head ached from crying the night before. She had spent hours praying softly beside the bed, asking God to give her wisdom. Kingston entered the kitchen dressed for work. His shirt was pressed. His face was clean. His voice, however, was sharp. "Why are your eyes swollen?" he asked. Shayla looked away. "I did not sleep well." He stepped closer. "You better not go outside looking like that." "I am not trying to embarrass you, Kingston." "You embarrass me by existing like this," he said. "Always looking miserable. Always making people wonder what is wrong in my house." Shayla's voice broke. "Something is wrong in this house." Kingston stared at her. For a moment the kitchen became silent. Then he smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Get dressed." Shayla frowned. "For what?" "We are going to the hospital." Her stomach dropped. "Hospital? Why?" "Because you need help." "I am not sick." Kingston picked up his keys. "That is what people like you always say." Shayla followed him with fear in her chest. "Kingston, what are you planning?" He opened the door and looked back at her. "You will know when we get there." At the hospital, Kingston changed again. He became gentle. He held Shayla's arm carefully as they walked in, like he was a concerned husband. The nurses greeted him politely. He smiled at everyone. "Good morning," he said softly. "I am just worried about my wife." Shayla looked at him, confused and afraid. Inside the doctor's office, Kingston sat beside her and sighed deeply. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked from Kingston to Shayla. "What seems to be the problem?" Kingston leaned forward. "Doctor, my wife has not been herself. She cries too much. She becomes angry without reason. Sometimes she says strange things about me." Shayla turned to him quickly. "Kingston." He raised his hand gently, pretending to calm her. "Please let me explain." The doctor looked at Shayla. "Mrs. Vale, is this true?" Shayla opened her mouth, but Kingston's eyes found hers. Cold, warning, powerful. Her words disappeared. Kingston sighed again. "Doctor, you see? This is what happens. She shuts down. Sometimes she even hurts herself, and later acts like she does not remember." Shayla's hands began to shake. "That is not true," she whispered. The doctor leaned forward. "Mrs. Vale, you can speak freely here." Shayla looked at the doctor's face, kind, patient, waiting. For one small second, Shayla wanted to tell everything. She wanted to say Brielle's name. She wanted to talk about the rain, the insults, the fear, the nights she cried into her pillow. But Kingston reached over and touched her hand. To the doctor, it looked loving. To Shayla, it felt like a warning. She lowered her head. Kingston shook his head sadly. "Doctor, this is what I deal with at home. I am trying my best as a husband." The doctor wrote something down. "I think rest and counseling may help. Mrs. Vale, I would like to speak with you privately next time, if that is okay." Kingston smiled quickly. "Of course, doctor. Anything to help her." But Shayla knew he would never allow it. When they left the hospital, Kingston's gentle face disappeared before they reached the car. Shayla stood beside the passenger door and whispered, "Why would you say those things?" Kingston unlocked the car. because people need to understand you are unstable." "I am not unstable. I am hurt." He leaned closer. "Hurt women talk too much. Unstable women are ignored." Shayla's eyes filled again. "You are destroying my name." Kingston opened her door and said, "No, Shayla, I am protecting mine." She sat in the car slowly, her body still, her spirit trembling. As Kingston drove away from the hospital, Shayla looked out the window and pressed one hand over her mouth. For the first time, she understood something clearly. Kingston was not only breaking her heart, he was building a story where nobody would believe her. That Sunday morning, Kingston Vale stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie like a man preparing for a holy assignment. His suit was dark navy, clean and expensive. His shoes shone like glass. His hair was neatly trimmed, his face freshly shaved, and his cologne filled the bedroom before he even stepped out. Shayla Hart stood near the closet, holding her church bag against her stomach. She was dressed in a modest cream dress, her makeup carefully covering the tiredness under her eyes. At 30, Shayla still looked graceful, but sadness had started sitting quietly on her face. Kingston looked at her through the mirror. "Fix your face," he said. Shayla blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Don't go to church looking like I trouble you at home." She lowered her eyes. "I am only tired." "Then look less tired." He turned around and smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "People watch pastors' helpers. People watch respected men's homes. I don't need your sad face giving them stories." Shayla nodded slowly. "Yes, Kingston." He walked past her toward the door, then stopped. "And when people greet you, smile." She swallowed. "I will." At church, Kingston became another man. The same Kingston who spoke coldly at home walked through the church entrance with one hand resting lightly on Shayla's back. He smiled at the ushers, he greeted the elders, he shook hands with the men, and bowed respectfully to the older women. "Brother Kingston," one woman called happily, "you and Sister Shayla look beautiful this morning." Kingston smiled warmly. "All glory to God, Mother Ruth." The woman turned to Shayla. "My dear, you are blessed. A man who fears God is not easy to find." Shayla forced a smile. "Yes, ma'am." Kingston's hand pressed lightly against her back. To others, it looked loving. To Shayla, it felt like a reminder. Inside the church, music filled the air. People clapped, sang, and lifted their hands. Shayla stood beside Kingston, singing softly, but her voice kept breaking. Every word about love, mercy, and peace touched a place in her that still hurt. Then Bishop Elroy Whitaker called Kingston forward. "Brother Kingston," the bishop said, smiling proudly, "come and encourage the couples this morning. The way you carry your home with dignity is something young men must learn from." The church clapped. Shayla's hands remained still for 1 second before she forced herself to clap too. Kingston walked to the front with humble steps. He held the microphone and bowed his head. "Church, marriage is not easy," he began, "but a real man must love his wife. A real man must protect his home. A real man must honor the woman God placed beside him." "Amen!" people shouted. Shayla stared at him. Her heart felt confused, angry, and broken at the same time. Kingston continued, his voice smooth and powerful. "Women are not objects. They are vessels of grace. If a man cannot treat his wife with patience, he has failed before God." The church clapped louder. A woman behind Shayla whispered, "Sister Shayla is truly blessed." Shayla's eyes burned. She wanted to stand up and say, "You don't know him." But she stayed seated. She stayed quiet. She stayed smiling. Across the room, Omari Cross watched her. Omari was 33, calm, broad-shouldered, and known in the church for speaking gently but truthfully. He had been Kingston's friend for years, but lately something about Shayla's silence troubled him. After service, Kingston stood outside laughing with the men. Shayla stood a few steps away, accepting compliments she did not know how to carry. Omari walked to Kingston when the crowd thinned. "Kingston," he said quietly, "can I speak to you?" Kingston smiled. "Of course, brother." Omari glanced toward Shayla, then back at him. "Your wife looks tired, not normal tired, spirit tired." Kingston's smile faded a little. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means check on her, be gentle with her." Kingston laughed under his breath. "You and this soft heart of yours." "I am serious." "So am I," Kingston said. "You pamper women too much. That is why they think they can control a house." Omari's face stayed calm. "Loving your wife is not weakness." Kingston leaned closer. "And letting a woman's tears rule you is not wisdom." Omari stared at him for a long moment. Before he could answer, Shayla walked over slowly. Kingston immediately smiled and placed an arm around her shoulder. "There she is," he said warmly. "My beautiful wife." Shayla looked at Omari, then looked down. Omari saw it, that small silence, that quick fear, that tired smile. And for the first time, Omari wondered if the man everyone praised was hiding something inside his own home. After that Sunday service, Shayla Hart carried Omari Cross's worried eyes in her mind all the way home. He had seen something, not everything, not the whole story, but enough to make Shayla afraid. Kingston Vale drove quietly beside her, one hand on the steering wheel, his face calm, as if he had not just stood before the church preaching about love and patience. For a few minutes, Shayla said nothing. Then Kingston spoke first. "You enjoyed the service?" Shayla looked at him carefully. "Yes." "Good." He smiled without looking at her. "Because you almost ruined it with that sad face." Her heart dropped. I smiled. "You smiled like a woman carrying bad news." "Kingston, I am tired." "Tired of what?" he asked, his voice sharpening. "Sitting in a good house, wearing good clothes, being married to a man people respect?" Shayla turned toward the window. He continued, "Some women are suffering for real. You, Shayla, you are just ungrateful." That word followed her into the house. Ungrateful. By evening, Shayla sat on the edge of the bed, holding her phone. Her hands trembled as she scrolled to her mother's number. Loretta Hart was 55, elegant, proud, and always dressed like life had never touched her with hardship. She lived in a beautiful apartment Kingston helped pay for. She liked comfort, she liked respect, she liked telling people her son-in-law was a blessing. Shayla pressed call. Her mother answered on the third ring. "Shayla, my daughter," Loretta said brightly. "How are you? I was just telling Sister Carol that Kingston is such a responsible man. He sent the rent money early this month." Shayla closed her eyes. "Mama, I need to talk to you." Loretta's voice changed slightly. "What happened?" Shayla swallowed. "Mama, I am tired. I can't continue like this." "Continue like what?" "My marriage," Shayla whispered. "I want to leave." There was silence. Then Loretta said, "Don't say that again." "Mama, please listen to me." "No, you listen to me," Loretta snapped. "What has come over you? Leave Kingston. Are you losing your mind?" Tears gathered in Shayla's eyes. "He is not the man people think he is." Loretta laughed once, sharply. "That man? Kingston? The same man who pays my rent without complaining? The same man who helps your brother Jalen with school fees? The same man who supports this family when nobody else does?" "Mama, money is not everything." "Money is not everything when you have it," Loretta said. "But when bills come, love will not pay them." Shayla pressed her palm to her chest. "So because he supports you, I should stay and suffer." "Mind your words," Loretta warned. "A woman must know how to humble herself in marriage." "Mama, I have humbled myself." Then humble yourself more. Shayla broke down quietly. I am your daughter. And I am your mother, Loretta said. That is why I am telling you the truth. Do not destroy a good home because your emotions are high. He hurts me with his words. Words do not kill, Loretta said quickly. Shayla, every marriage has problems. He brings shame into this house. Then pray. I have prayed. Then pray harder. Shayla stared at the floor, tears falling onto her dress. Loretta softened her voice, but not her heart. Listen, my child. Once you give him a baby, everything will calm down. Men change when children come. Shayla whispered, and if they don't come? Loretta went quiet. That silence answered more than words. The next afternoon, Loretta came to visit. Before she arrived, Kingston became a different man. He cleaned the living room. He ordered groceries. He even stood in the kitchen stirring soup as if he cooked every day. When Loretta entered, Kingston greeted her with a wide smile. Mama Loretta, my beautiful mother-in-law. Loretta laughed. Kingston, my son. God bless you. He hugged her gently. Anything for family. Shayla stood nearby, watching. Kingston turned to her and said sweetly, Baby, please bring your mother a drink. Baby. The word sounded strange in his mouth. Loretta smiled at Shayla. You see, this is what I mean. Your husband loves you. Shayla looked at her mother, hoping she would see through it. But Loretta only saw the food, the rent, the comfort, the performance. Later, when Kingston stepped outside to take a call, Shayla whispered, Mama, he's pretending. Loretta's face hardened. Shayla, stop it. A man like this is not easy to find. Shayla's voice shook. So you don't believe me? Loretta adjusted her handbag and looked away. I believe you are emotional. That sentence settled between them like a locked door. Shayla nodded slowly, wiping her tears before Kingston returned. That day she understood something painful. Sometimes strangers doubt you because they do not know you, but family doubts you because believing you would cost them too much. The next morning, Shayla Hart woke up with her mother's words still sitting heavy on her chest. I believe you are emotional. Those words hurt her almost as much as Kingston's insults, because Kingston was her husband, but Loretta was her mother. A mother was supposed to hear the pain behind her daughter's voice. A mother was supposed to see what others missed, but Loretta had seen Kingston's smile, his cooking, his soft voice, and she had chosen that performance over Shayla's tears. By afternoon, Shayla could not carry it alone anymore. She dressed simply, took her purse, and left the house before Kingston returned. Her heart beat fast as she got into a taxi. She kept looking behind her, afraid someone would see her leaving and report it back to him. The taxi stopped in front of a small cafe on a quiet street. That was where her two closest friends were waiting. Sade Brooks stood first. Sade was 31, bold, stylish, and sharp-tongued when truth needed to be spoken. She wore a mustard blouse, dark jeans, and gold hoop earrings. The moment she saw Shayla's face, her smile disappeared. Shayla, Sade said softly, what happened? Omari Cross also stood up. He was 33, calm, steady, and gentle in the way he carried himself. He had the kind of presence that made people feel safe without saying much. Shayla tried to smile. I'm okay. Sade crossed her arms. Don't lie to people who love you. That was all Shayla needed. She broke down. Sade quickly held her, and Omari pulled out a chair for her. Shayla sat down, covering her face with both hands. I called my mother, Shayla said through tears. I told her I wanted to leave Kingston. Sade leaned forward. And? She told me to humble myself. Omari's jaw tightened, but he said nothing yet. Shayla wiped her face. She said Kingston pays her rent. He pays Jalen's school fees. He supports the family. She said I should not destroy a good home because of emotions. Sade stared at her in disbelief. A good home? Shayla, are you hearing yourself? I know, Shayla whispered, but that is how everyone sees him. Omari spoke gently. How do you see him? Shayla looked down. The cafe noise faded around them. I see a man I keep praying for, she said, but I also see a man who knows how to hurt me and smile in public. Sade's eyes filled with anger. That is not love. Sade, no, don't defend it, Sade said. Love does not make you afraid to speak. Love does not make you rehearse your words before asking for food. Love does not make your own house feel like a courtroom. Shayla pressed her lips together. Omari leaned closer. Shayla, God does not ask you to disappear so a man can look good. Her tears returned. But nobody will believe me. We believe you, Sade said immediately. Shayla shook her head. You two believe me because you know me. But the church, the community, my mother, they all think Kingston is righteous. If I leave, he will turn everybody against me. Omari's voice stayed low. Then don't walk alone. Shayla looked at him. He held her gaze for a moment, then looked away as if fighting his own heart. Sade noticed. Her eyes moved from Omari to Shayla, but she said nothing. Later, after Sade stepped outside to answer a call, Shayla and Omari sat alone at the table. For a while, neither spoke. Then Omari said, Shayla, there is something I need to say, but I don't want to disrespect you. She looked nervous. What is it? He breathed in slowly. I care about you. Deeply. More than I should, maybe. And it hurts me to watch you break in a place where you should be loved. Shayla's eyes widened. Omari, I am not asking you for anything, he said quickly. I know you are married. I know your faith matters to you. I know this is complicated. She shook her head, tears falling again. Please don't make this harder. I'm sorry, he said. I just needed you to know that someone sees your worth. Shayla stood up slowly. I love my husband, and before God, I cannot open my heart to another man while I am still his wife. Omari nodded, hurt but respectful. I understand. Sade came back inside and sensed the heaviness immediately. What did I miss? Shayla picked up her purse. I should go. Omari stood. Let me call you a ride. No, she said softly. I need to breathe for a minute. Outside, Shayla looked up at the sky, fighting fresh tears. Behind her, Omari whispered to Sade, I'm scared for her. Sade looked through the window at Shayla and said, Then we don't let her face this alone. By the time Shayla Hart returned home that evening, the house felt different, not quiet, waiting. She stood at the front door for a moment, holding her purse close to her chest. Something in her spirit told her to breathe before entering. Something told her that peace was not inside. When she opened the door, Kingston Vale was sitting in the living room with his phone in his hand. Brielle St. James sat beside him, wearing a satisfied smile that made Shayla's stomach tighten. Kingston looked up slowly. Where have you been? Shayla closed the door behind her. I went to see Sade and Omari. Brielle laughed softly. Omari, of course. Shayla turned to her. Please don't. Kingston stood. Don't what? Don't question you? Don't ask why my wife is running around town with another man? Shayla's eyes widened. I went to see my friends. Sade was there too. But you mentioned Omari first, Brielle said, smiling. Shayla looked at Kingston. You know Omari. He is your friend too. Kingston stepped closer, his voice low. Do not use my friend's name to cover your disrespect. I have not disrespected you, Shayla said, her voice shaking. I went there because I needed someone to talk to. About me? Shayla went silent. Kingston smiled bitterly. So you went outside to destroy my name? No. I went outside because I am tired of crying alone. For a moment, Kingston only stared at her. Then he turned toward the hallway. "Pack your things." Shayla froze. "What?" "I said pack your things." Brielle leaned back on the sofa, watching like she had been waiting for this moment. Shayla shook her head. "Kingston, this is my home." Kingston pointed toward the stairs. "Not anymore." "Please," Shayla whispered. "Don't do this." He moved past her and opened the front door. "You wanted people to comfort you. Go and let them comfort you." Brielle finally spoke. A woman should know when her season in a man's house has ended. Shayla looked at her with tears in her eyes. "You are sitting in my living room and saying that to me?" Brielle shrugged. "I am only saying what everyone can see." Shayla went upstairs with trembling legs. She packed a small bag because her hands could not carry much. Clothes, her Bible, a few documents, a framed photo from the early days of her marriage, before Kingston's eyes became cold. When she came back down, Kingston was still standing by the door. She looked at him one last time. "You are really throwing me out?" He did not answer. That silence was answer enough. Shayla stepped outside. The door closed behind her. For a long moment she stood there, staring at the house she had prayed in, cleaned, cooked in, cried in, and called home. Then she called her mother. Loretta Hart answered with impatience in her voice. "Shayla, what now?" "Mama," Shayla cried, "Kingston sent me out." There was a pause. Then Loretta said, "Come." Hope rose in Shayla's chest, but when she arrived at her mother's apartment, that hope died at the doorway. Loretta stood in a silk robe, her face tight with worry. "Did you apologize to him?" Shayla stared. "Mama, he threw me out." "Then go back and beg. Mama, please, I have nowhere to go." Loretta lowered her voice. "If you stay here, Kingston will stop paying my rent. He will stop helping Jalen. Do you want this family to collapse because of your pride?" "My pride?" Shayla whispered. Loretta looked away. "Go back to your husband." Shayla's lips trembled. "I am your daughter. And I am telling my daughter to be wise." Then Loretta closed the door. Shayla stood in the hallway, holding her small bag, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. With shaking hands, she called Omari. He answered immediately. "Shayla?" She could barely speak. "I have nowhere to go." His voice changed at once. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." That night, Omari took her into a safe guest room in his home. He did not ask for anything. He did not cross any line. He only placed a blanket on the bed and said, "You can rest here. You are safe." But while Shayla was finally closing her eyes, Kingston was making his next move. He called Bishop Elroy Whitaker, then he called Loretta, and before morning came, a darker story had already begun spreading. By morning, Shayla Hart's name was already moving through the community like smoke. Nobody came to ask her what happened. Nobody came to hear her side. People only whispered. They whispered at the grocery store. They whispered near the church gate. They whispered in small groups with shocked faces and pleased curiosity, as if Shayla's pain had become public entertainment. By Sunday, Bishop Elroy Whitaker called a private church meeting. Private, they said, but half the church seemed to know about it. Shayla sat near the front with her hands folded tightly in her lap. Omari Cross sat a few chairs away from her, calm but visibly troubled. He had insisted on coming, not to speak over her, not to shame her, but to make sure she did not stand alone. Kingston Vale walked in wearing a dark suit and a wounded expression. That was the dangerous thing about Kingston. He knew how to look broken when he wanted sympathy. Bishop Whitaker cleared his throat. "Brother Kingston, you asked for this meeting. Speak carefully before God." Kingston lowered his head. "My heart is heavy, Bishop," he said. "I loved my wife. I protected her. I covered her weakness. But she has chosen to dishonor our home. Shayla's eyes widened. Kingston! He lifted one hand as if he was too hurt to continue. I found out she has been spending time with Omari. I tried to correct her quietly, but she left my house and went to him. Omari stood immediately. That is not true. Bishop Whitaker raised his hand. Brother Omari, sit down. Shayla's voice trembled. Bishop, please. He threw me out. I had nowhere to go. Kingston shook his head sadly. This is what I have been dealing with. She twists everything. The room grew heavy. Then the door opened. Loretta Hart walked in. Shayla turned quickly. For 1 second, hope touched her face. Her mother had come. Maybe this time, maybe just this once, Loretta would tell the truth. Mama, Shayla whispered. Loretta did not look at her. She stood beside Kingston. Shayla's heart dropped before her mother even spoke. Bishop Whitaker looked at Loretta. Sister Loretta, as her mother, what do you know? Loretta adjusted her purse with shaking fingers. Bishop, I am ashamed to say this. Shayla slowly stood. Mama, don't. Loretta swallowed. My daughter has not been acting like a wife. I warned her many times. I told her to stay in her marriage, but she refused correction. Shayla's lips parted. Mama. Loretta's eyes filled with tears, but she continued. Kingston has done his best. A sound left Shayla's mouth, small and broken. Omari looked at Loretta with disbelief. You know that is not true. Loretta finally looked at Shayla. My daughter has brought shame to this family. The room went silent. Shayla sat down slowly, as if her legs could no longer carry her. Kingston lowered his face, hiding the satisfaction in his eyes. After that day, the community changed toward Shayla. Women who once hugged her now crossed the street. Men who once greeted Omari now gave him cold nods. At church, seats seemed to empty around Shayla whenever she entered, so she stopped going, not because she stopped believing in God, but because the place that should have covered her wounds had pressed on them instead. 3 months passed. Shayla lived quietly in the guest room at Omari's house. Omari kept his distance respectfully. Sade Brooks came often, bringing food, prayer, and the kind of anger that loved loudly. One morning, Shayla woke up feeling weak. She sat on the edge of the bed, one hand on her stomach, breathing slowly. Sud noticed immediately. Shayla, you don't look right. I'm fine, Shayla said. No, you are not. Later that afternoon, Sade returned with a small pharmacy bag. Shayla stared at it. Sade. Just check, Sade said softly. Minutes later, Shayla stood in the bathroom, staring at the result with trembling hands. Pregnant, her knees weakened. Sade held her before she could fall. Shayla began to cry, not loudly, not wildly, but deeply. They called me Barren, she whispered. Sade, they called me Barren. Sade cried with her. But God heard what they said. When Omari came home, Shayla showed him the result. He stared at it, then looked at her with gentle seriousness. You have to tell Kingston, he said. Fear entered Shayla's face. He will not believe me. Maybe not, Omari said, but truth must still be spoken. The next day, Omari accompanied her to Kingston's house. He stayed outside the gate, while Shayla stood before her husband with shaking hands. Kingston opened the door and frowned. What do you want? Shayla lifted her chin. I am pregnant. For a moment, Kingston said nothing. Then he laughed, coldly, cruelly. Pregnant? He said. Then go and tell the man who gave it to you. Shayla's face crumbled. Kingston, you know the truth. He stepped back and began closing the door. I know one thing, he said. That child is not mine. The door shut in her face. Shayla stood there, holding her stomach with both hands, while Omari watched from the gate, his eyes full of pain he could not speak. After Kingston shut the door in Shayla Hart's face, she did not move for a long moment. Her hands remained on her stomach. Her eyes stayed fixed on the closed door. Behind her, Omari Cross stood near the gate, watching her with pain in his eyes. He did not rush her. He did not speak too quickly. He only waited, because some heartbreaks needed silence before comfort could enter. Finally, Shayla turned around. Her face was wet with tears. "He said the child is not his," she whispered. Omari walked toward her slowly. "I heard. He said it like I am nothing." Omari looked at the door, then back at her. "Shayla, listen to me. What a man rejects does not stop being precious." She shook her head. "How am I going to do this?" "One day at a time," Omari said, "and you will not do it alone." Shayla looked at him. "Omari, this is not your responsibility." He answered gently, "Maybe not, but you are my friend, and right now, friendship means standing." From that day, Omari kept his word. He took Shayla to her appointments. He waited in hospital chairs with quiet patience. He bought groceries when she was too tired to cook. He prayed with her when fear came at night. He never crossed boundaries. He never made her feel ashamed. He never treated her like a burden. Still, the months were not easy. Sometimes Shayla woke up crying. Sometimes she sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "God, I am scared." And Omari, standing respectfully outside the open doorway, would say, "Being scared does not mean you have no faith. It means you are human." Sade Brooks visited often, too. She brought soup, fruit, baby clothes, and laughter. One afternoon, Sade walked in carrying 3 small gift bags. Shayla frowned. "Sade, why 3? Sade grinned. "Because I like to over-prepare." Omari, who was fixing a baby shelf in the corner, looked up and smiled. "You call this over-preparing?" Sade pointed at him. "Don't question my prophetic shopping." For the first time in weeks, Shayla laughed. That laugh filled the room like light. Later, at one appointment, the doctor looked at the scan, paused, and smiled. "Mrs. Vale," she said carefully, "you are carrying more than one baby." Shayla blinked. "More than one?" The doctor smiled wider. 3. Shayla's hand flew to her mouth. Sade gasped loudly. 3? Omari froze. "Triplets." The doctor nodded. 2 girls and 1 boy. Shayla began to cry right there in the chair. Not because she was afraid only, but because the same woman people mocked as Barren was now carrying 3 lives. Saad held her shoulder. "Shayla, look at God." Omari's eyes shone with tears, but he blinked them away. 3 blessings, he whispered. The pregnancy became heavier, so everyone became more careful. Shayla moved slower. Saad stayed closer. Omari prepared the house quietly, adding 3 little cribs in the spare room, 3 soft blankets, and 3 tiny name cards Shayla had written herself. Little Zuri, Little Zyla, Little Zion. When the Labor Day came, Shayla was afraid, but she was not abandoned. Saad held her hand. Omari stood nearby, praying under his breath. The medical team moved quickly and safely around her, speaking with calm voices. Shayla cried, "I can't do this." Sade squeezed her hand. "Yes, you can." Omari said softly, "Shayla, breathe. God brought you this far." Hours later, the room filled with the sound of newborn cries. First came little Zuri, then little Zyla, then little Zion. Shayla lay there exhausted, tears sliding down her face, as the babies were safely placed near her one by one. "My babies," she whispered. "My beautiful babies." Saad cried openly. 3, Shayla, 3. Omari stood still, overwhelmed. He looked at the babies, then at Shayla. "You made it," he said. Shayla looked at him with tired eyes. "We made it." For a moment, nobody spoke. There was only peace. Weeks turned into months, and the babies grew in a small home filled with soft lullabies, prayer, and quiet sacrifice. When they cried, Shayla rose. When she grew tired, Omari helped from a respectful distance. When fear returned, Sade reminded her, "You are not alone." But as the triplets grew older and began to speak, the questions also began. Little Zion once looked up at Shayla and asked, "Mama, where is Daddy?" Shayla froze. Little Zuri asked, "Is Uncle Omari our daddy?" Little Zayla held her doll and whispered, "Did Daddy travel?" Shayla's heart twisted. She knelt before them and smiled through the ache. "Uncle Omari loves you very much," she said softly. "And your father traveled." The children nodded innocently and ran back to their toys. Omari stood in the hallway, silent. Shayla looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I hate lying to them," she whispered. Omari answered quietly, "You are not trying to deceive them. You are trying to protect their little hearts." Shayla looked toward the children. They were laughing now, safe in their small world. But deep inside, she knew one day the truth would ask to be spoken. When the triplets were still small, Shayla Hart and Omari Cross made one painful decision. They would not take the children to Kingston Vale. Not yet. The children were innocent. Their hearts were soft. They still believed their father had traveled, and Shayla could not bear to place them in front of a man who might reject them without mercy. So one afternoon, Shayla dressed quietly and placed 3 small pictures inside her handbag. Little Zuri, smiling with 2 tiny ribbons in her hair. Little Zayla, holding her doll, close to her chest. Little Zion standing proudly with one hand on a toy football. Omari waited by the door. "Are you sure?" Shayla looked down at the pictures. "No, but he should at least see them." They drove to Kingston's house in silence. When Kingston opened the door, he did not look pleased to see them. Behind him, Brielle St. James appeared in a silk robe, carrying herself like a woman who had won a prize. "What do you want?" Kingston asked. Shayla pulled the pictures from her handbag with trembling fingers. "These are the children," she said softly. "Your children." Kingston looked at the photos. For one moment, his face changed. Just one moment. Then it closed again. Brielle stepped closer and laughed under her breath. "So now she is bringing pictures?" Shayla ignored her. "Kingston, look at them. They are growing. They ask questions." Kingston pushed the pictures back toward her. "They are not mine." Omari's jaw tightened. "You do not even want to know them." Kingston looked at Omari with cold eyes. "Take her and those pictures away from my house." Shayla stood there, holding the photos against her chest. Brielle smiled and placed her hand on Kingston's shoulder. "Kingston has a family here." That sentence ended the visit. Shayla left without another word. In the car, she did not cry immediately. She only stared ahead, breathing slowly, as if one more tear would break something inside her. Omari drove quietly. After a while, Shayla whispered, "He rejected them again." Omari answered, "Then we will love them enough that his rejection will not define them." Years passed, 18 years, to be exact. The little children who once asked innocent questions grew into young adults. Little Zion became Zion Hart, a gifted footballer whose name began appearing on sports pages and city billboards. His speed, discipline, and humble spirit made people love him. Little Zuri and little Zyla also grew into confident young women, 18 years old, graceful, talented, and known in the city for their beauty, creativity, and public success. They were no longer little girls asking where their father had gone. They were grown, bright, and admired. Shayla, now 49, carried herself with quiet strength. Life had matured her face, but it had not stolen her beauty. Omari, now 52, had a few silver strands in his beard, and the calm dignity of a man who had stood through many storms. And Kingston? Kingston Vale was not the same man. At 53, his once proud walk had slowed, his health had weakened, his money had thinned. The luxury around him remained only on the surface, because Brielle's lifestyle had eaten deep into his accounts. She wanted trips, she wanted jewelry, she wanted new cars. And when Kingston tried to invest what was left, the investments failed badly. One evening, Kingston sat in the hallway outside his office, tired and sweating lightly, when he heard Brielle's voice from the bedroom. She was on the phone. "That man is finished," she said, laughing softly. "He thinks these children are his. Foolish man. Once I move the last money from his account, I'm leaving this country with my children." Kingston stopped breathing for a second. His hand gripped the wall. Brielle continued, "I wasted enough years pretending. He rejected his real wife for me, and look at him now. Sick, broke, and still stupid." Kingston pushed the door open. Brielle turned sharply. "Kingston!" His voice shook. "Say it again." She lowered the phone. "You heard nothing." "I heard everything." The argument that followed was bitter, loud, and full of old sins finally waking up. Brielle tried to walk past him, but the struggle became serious. She fell, and panic filled the room. The neighbors called for help. Police came. Brielle was taken away by ambulance, unconscious but alive. Kingston was placed in handcuffs. As they led him out, he kept saying, "She lied to me. She lied to me." But by morning, the police had more than Brielle's secret. They had old evidence, videos, messages, records. And for the first time in years, Kingston Vale's holy image began cracking in front of everyone. The evidence did what Shayla Hart's tears could not do years ago. It made people listen. Messages came out. Recordings came out. Hospital records were reviewed. Old neighbors began speaking. Even Brielle St. James, before disappearing from the hospital story, gave statements that exposed how Kingston Vale had controlled the truth for years. Kingston tried to defend himself, but his polished words no longer carried power. The same community that once praised him now watched him stand before the law with his head lowered. When the sentence came, the courtroom went silent. 5 years. Shayla sat at the back beside Omari Cross, Sade Brooks, and her grown triplets. Zion Hart held his mother's hand. Zuri and Zoila sat close to her, their faces serious and mature. Kingston turned once before they took him away. His eyes found Shayla's. For the first time, he looked like a man who wanted to speak, but Shayla looked away. Some apologies arrived too late to repair what they destroyed. While Kingston served his sentence, Brielle vanished with the last of his money. The children he had raised were gone with her. His house was sold. His name lost its shine. The man who once protected his image had nothing left but memories and regret. Shayla did not celebrate his downfall. She only chose peace. During those years, her legal marriage to Kingston finally ended. Quietly, properly, cleanly. She did not rush. She did not jump from one man to another. She prayed. She healed. She focused on her children, who were now young adults, building their own lives. Omari remained beside her, not loudly, not forcefully, just faithfully. One evening, he stood with her in the garden behind the house and held a small ring box in his hand. "Shayla," he said softly, "I have loved you through silence, through waiting, through prayer, and through pain. I am not asking you to forget anything. I am asking if you will let joy live here too." Shayla's eyes filled with tears. "Omari, I don't know if I am ready." He nodded, closing the box gently. "Then I will wait." And he did. Months passed. He asked again. She still hesitated. Then one Sunday evening, Zion, Zuri, and Zoila sat their mother down in the living room. Zion, now 23, strong and disciplined from football, looked at her with gentle seriousness. "Mama, you gave us everything. Zuri held her hand. You protected us even when your own heart was broken. Zyla wiped a tear from her cheek. Uncle Omari has loved this family with patience. Mama, you deserve happiness too. Shayla covered her mouth and cried. That night, she went to Omari. Yes, she whispered. Omari stared at her. Yes? She smiled through tears. Yes, Omari. I choose joy. Their wedding was not loud with pride. It was full of peace. Shayla, now older and graceful, walked forward with silver touches in her hair and light in her eyes. Omari, mature and steady, waited for her with tears he did not hide. The family had survived shame. Now they were standing in honor. 5 years after Kingston entered prison, he was released. That same week, Shayla's family attended one of Zion's major football matches. The stadium roared for him. Zuri and Zyla smiled proudly beside their mother. Omari held Shayla's hand, but outside the stadium, they saw Kingston. He looked older, thinner, and tired. His proud shoulders had fallen. Shayla, he said, voice trembling, please, let me come back. Shayla's face softened, but her answer was firm. I forgive you, Kingston, but you cannot return to what you rejected. At home, Shayla finally told the triplets the full truth. Kingston was their biological father. He had denied them before they were born. Omari had stood where Kingston refused to stand. The children cried, but they did not break. Later, the truth reached the church. Bishop Elroy Whitaker, now old and humbled, invited Shayla's family back and apologized publicly. We judged without truth, he said. We protected image instead of protecting a wounded woman. We were wrong. When Kingston later visited Shayla's beautiful home, Zion spoke for the three of them. We forgive you, he said, but forgiveness is not access. Forgiveness is not money. Forgiveness is not a family seat you refuse to earn. Kingston left with tears in his eyes, and Shayla stayed with peace in hers. Months later, the family gathered again, this time around a doctor's careful confirmation of a rare late-life pregnancy. Shayla would need close care, but her face glowed with quiet joy. Omari held her hand. Zion, Zuri, and Zyla surrounded her, laughing and crying at once. The woman who had once been rejected finally stood in a home full of love. Not perfect love, not easy love, but faithful love, the kind that stays.